Hey everyone, I wanted to take this time to kind of look over some of our reproductive hormones. I know that we've gone over these and we did start them before we left, but I really wanted to focus in on a couple of them, especially when it comes to the female reproductive system. Moving forward, we're going to have to really know these inside out and backwards, because specifically knowing what each of these hormones are going to do is going to help us understand a lot of the processes that happen, like the menstrual cycle, fetal development, etc. So we're going to start with estrogen. Okay, so when we look at estrogen releasing from the ovary is going to target all of our cells. So what we talked about from the endocrine system is that we know that it's related to our secondary sex characteristics. These are characteristics that are going to happen during puberty. But what we also have to look at is some of the more specifics that estrogen is going to do with the reproductive system. So it's also going to develop the endometrium. So remember, your endometrium is part of your uterus, okay, and it's going to line the inside of the uterus. So the endometrium is the structure where implantation, okay, is going to occur if an egg and a sperm are going to unite. So it's really important that estrogen is going to target the development of that endometrium. So we need to be able to make the connection. If we have high estrogen, that is going to lead to the development of the endometrium. But in turn, if I have low estrogen, that means a female or an individual will not develop that endometrium properly. So that's important for us to understand, especially when we look at hormonal imbalances. The other thing is that it's going to provide positive feedback to the pituitary, which is going to release LH, or luteinizing hormone. Okay, LH is responsible for triggering ovulation on the 14th day of the menstrual cycle. So ovulation is where the egg is going to release. So this is where it's important for us to have estrogen, because with a proper amount of estrogen, LH is then going to be able to be produced, and LH in turn will allow that egg to be released. Okay, moving on. So when we look at progesterone, we've always categorized as saying that it's coming from the ovary, but this time we need to be specific that it's coming from the corpus luteum. Okay, so when we talked about the corpus luteum is that, if I quickly draw an ovary here, okay, is that immature eggs start here. On day 14, the egg is released. Okay, so that's what we refer to as ovulation. But the structure that's left after that egg is released is what we call the corpus luteum. So the corpus luteum is only produced after day 14 in a menstrual cycle, and it's only produced after that egg is released into the fallopian tube. Okay, so that's very, very important. Is before this corpus luteum fully leaves and disintegrates, is that corpus luteum is going to be responsible for producing progesterone. Okay, so what the hormone actually does is that it's going to inhibit uterine contractions, and it's also going to inhibit ovulation using negative feedback. So that, once again, we're going to review a little bit more when we get into our menstrual cycle, which is the next tutorial video. So, moving forward, you have FSH. Change colors. Okay, so our FSH are follicle stimulating hormones. So if we look at that title itself, follicle stimulating. So that is related to, it's going to develop a follicle into a mature egg. This needs to occur before ovulation. And when we go to our next video, ovulation occurs approximately about day 14 in most women. When we look at a 28-day menstrual cycle, we refer to ovulation being approximately around day 14. So what we need to look at is, when would FSH be high in the menstrual cycle? Well, it probably needs to spike before ovulation. Luteinizing hormone. So when we look at a luteinizing hormone, okay, released from the pituitary, targets your ovaries and testes. But when we specifically look at the female, is that it's going to stimulate estrogen production. This is important to understand, that there's a relationship with LH to your estrogen. So in order to produce estrogen, you need to have LH being produced first. So LH is also going to help trigger ovulation, and it's also going to produce the production of testosterone. This is more related to males, but because it's just a general review of the hormones, I did want to add that in there as well. But the big thing to understand is that LH is going to help the stimulation of estrogen production. Because if we go back, what does estrogen do is that it's going to develop that endometrium. Okay, and here we go back, and that's the connection with the LH. All right, so that's it for this tutorial. Stay tuned for the next one.